Good afternoon. My name is Pete Dalton. I'm the broker owner of Coldwell Banker Vanguard Realty. I want to thank you all for coming this afternoon. What we're going to cover in this video is three things. Actually, we're going to cover a brief recap of what should happen before the listing appointment. Then we're going to cover the listing presentation itself. And then finally, we're going to cover the pricing presentation and how you use that to actually close the transaction. There are always 3 or 4 steps in a listing process. There's, if we follow the ninja path, there are the steps of the pre-listing interview, which I think we all know that we want to do. So at the pre-listing interview, we want to make sure that we connect with the people. We want to make sure that we build rapport with the people. We find out what their why is, that we find out where they're moving, and that we understand the situation completely. We want to make sure that we take control of the situation when we're in the pre-listing interview. We also want to make sure that we deliver the pre-listing package, so if they've got that beforehand. Usually we're going to do all this on the inspection appointment when we go out and look at the house. That becomes our vehicle for doing that. So after we've gone through the inspection appointment, then we're going to come back and we're going to do the actual presentation appointment. So we want to make sure that we separate the inspection and the rapport building from the actual presentation. In order to succeed consistently, you need to know what the steps are, and you need to make sure that you get everything in the right place. So we're going to move ahead now to the actual listing presentation. So here are the rules. Whenever you go on a listing appointment, you want to make sure that you're 5 minutes early. 1 minute late is way too late. 10 minutes early is way too early, so 5 minutes is the rule. You want to be there 5 minutes early, even if you have to drive around the neighborhood 3 times to make sure that you're there at the right time. You want to make sure that you take the time to warm up your audience. That means you want to come in, you want to sit down in the living room, you want to sit down in the family room, you might want to revisit the house, you want to make sure that you're comfortable. If only one person was there when you went out and inspected the house, you want to make sure that you build rapport with the person who was not there so that you're not talking to the person you do know and ignoring the other person. Once again, you need to make sure that you take control of the situation. So here's where we are. It is their house, obviously, but it's your evening. Okay? This is your chance to shine. And just like you don't want to go to a doctor and have him be a little wishy-washy about what the treatment should be, and you don't want to go to an attorney who sounds a little bit tentative about what you're going to do with your case, if you're a seller, you also don't want to go talk to a real estate agent who's not in control. Okay? So sellers usually want you to take control, especially when you do it well. So we want to warm people up. Then we want to make sure we take control. This is your evening. You're on. It's almost like a production, and you need to make sure that you do it right. You need to go either to the kitchen or to the dining room to make your presentation. You cannot make a listing presentation when you're 6, 8, 10 feet away from the person you're talking to. Your message gets diluted by the distance. Okay? So you need to make sure that you're in the kitchen when you make your presentation, because that's where most families actually make their decisions. Okay? If you've come in, you're in the family room, you sat down, hopefully didn't sit all the way back in the couch, but you're sort of up, not on the edge of the couch, but not leaning back. The way to go to the kitchen is to ask people or to tell people, let's go to the kitchen. You say simply, look, I brought a lot of information tonight, and I think what we need to do is go to the kitchen table, and I can show it to you better. So let's do that. And then you stand up as you say that. If you sit there and say, let's go to the dining room so I can show you what I brought, people are going to say, well, that's okay, I can see it here. But if you stand up when you say it, and you start to walk towards the kitchen or the dining room, they're going to follow you. Okay? And if they don't follow you, and you continue to walk into the kitchen or dining room, guess what? They're not going to leave you there by yourself. They're going to come. Okay? And when they come, now who's in control of the situation? You are. Because they're doing what you've told them to do, and you have subtly taken control of the evening. So that's a really critical step. And when you get there, you want to make sure that you assign the seating. So it's really easy, especially if the husband sits at one end of a big table and the wife sits at the other end of the table, that the husband sits where he normally sits for dinner and the wife sits where she sits for dinner, and suddenly you're in the middle. Okay? So if I'm looking at the husband, what am I doing to the wife? I'm ignoring her, aren't I? And if I'm looking at the wife, then I'm ignoring the husband. So that's called ping-ponging, and we need to make sure that we don't get in a situation where we're ping-ponging when we make our presentation. So to continue taking control, what we want to do is tell people where we want them to sit. Mr. Seller, why don't you sit here? Which is probably the head of the table, which is probably where he sits anyway. And then Mrs. Seller, why don't you sit over here and I'll sit here. So now I've got the seller at the head, the seller's wife across from me, and I'm right here, and I can make the point to the seller, and I can still see what his wife is registering, can't I? Okay? Or I can make the point to the wife, and I can see what the husband's registering, and I'm not going back and forth. Okay? So if you've done all these things, then you're ready to make your presentation. So the objective tonight, it's important that you understand what the objective is. The objective tonight is twofold. You want, when you walk out that door, to have two things. Number one is a signed listing agreement. And number two is an understanding with the seller of how this is going to work. So a lot of people think that what they need to do is go out and make a good presentation. There are a lot of people who are good presenters that are really not very good salespeople. So if you're going to be a successful real estate agent, you need to not just be a successful presenter, you need to also be a successful salesman. Make sense? Okay? So, before we do that, let's talk about the presentation itself. What you say on every slide is there for a purpose. Every slide in this presentation has a specific message that it's getting across, and you need to make sure that you understand that message and that you can relay it. Okay? You need to learn every slide. You can't sort of know it. If you sort of know it, you're sort of going to blow it. You have to own it, and you have to believe it, because if you don't communicate your strong belief in what you're doing, then the seller's not going to believe it either. You're not going to make the impression that you need to make. Okay? I think the way to learn this is one slide at a time. So you learn the first slide by saying it out loud, and then you learn the second slide all by itself, and then you put the first slide and the second slide together, and then you learn the third slide, and then you put slides 1, 2, 3 together, and you just keep building it one slide at a time until you've got the whole thing put together and you know where your closes are, you know what you're going to say, you know what objections you might get, and you can go through it smoothly. The only way that I know to do that, frankly, is with a tape recorder. Get your phone, get the tape recorder app, put it on there, record it, listen to yourself, go, oh my God, I can't believe I sound like that. Okay? And then do it again when it sounds better, because you're going to go, oh, that's terrible. But after you've done it 4 or 5 times, you will see how much better you are on the 4th or 5th time than you were the first time, and you'll find out that that really works, and that's the way that you learn it. The dialogue for each one of these slides is on ConnectU. So the presentation, the listing presentation, is now up on ConnectU. It's got a presentation mode, and it's got a learning mode, which gives you all the dialogue, all the closes for each page. There are 3 specific closes that you have to make in order to get a listing. You need to understand what they are, how they work, and when you make them. Number 1, you've got to sell that Coldwell Banker is an acceptable brand. Okay? Not that it's the best brand, not the best thing since sliced bread, but that it's an acceptable brand. The second sale that you have to make is you have to show the seller that our Insider Review marketing program is better than anything else that's out there on the market. He's got to understand that. And then the third thing you've got to sell the seller on is that you're the guy, okay? That you're the person who can do this. You've got to gain his agreement. So there are 3 sales in this presentation. Coldwell Banker is the company, the brand, Insider Review is the program, and I'm the agent. And when you sell those 3 things, then getting the listing becomes very easy. So let's assume that we're sitting around the dining room table, and we'll get started now.